That was by Russell Nelson in 2011.
I can tell you that it's someone who just passed my 70th year. This is so true. And it's true in any area of our life. Our section now is your family financial plan. So it's got an interesting section. So I'm going to click on this template. There's actually 3 parts to this. Part 1 is how are you brought up? So the box is instructions. The first section here is just talking about how were you brought up with finance? How was money handled in your family? What kind of lessons did your parents try to teach you? Did you have a family theme or motto? Then how were cash and savings handled, or debt? How about investments and attitudes? Again, we'd encourage you to talk with your parents. If that's a little uncomfortable, just kind of think back about how you were raised.
And so this template, the family financial template, is due a week from Friday. So it's something you should start working on as soon as you finish the other one.
Okay, so the second part is cultural expectations. We're actually going to take a culture survey. We will have that for you on Friday. And so what we want to do is help you see, are there cultural expectations? And do you feel those cultural expectations?
And so even though Elder Sedwick's and I grew up in the U.S., he grew up in California, I grew up in Illinois.
That probably explains all the differences.
But so we grew up, even though we grew up both in the U.S. and stuff, we still grew up in 2 different family cultures. His family was extremely active. His dad was bishop for 9 years. My family was converts. They were not active sometimes, and sometimes they were. And so we were brought up in 2 completely different family cultures.
So that has an influence. And then once we talk about, you do the cultural survey, what are some of the expectations about you from your national culture? How will you bridge those expectations? So what we'll talk on Friday, we're going to talk about culture. What was the first culture? The first culture was the culture of Adam and Eve. And then all other cultures are derivations from that one. So what happens when our cultures and the culture of Christ differ? That's what we call bridging the culture gap. How about your community culture? What are your community expectations of you? How will you bridge those expectations? How about family culture and extended family culture? And then, how are you going to create your culture? What's your vision for your family and your eternal family? What are your goals? What are your plans and strategies? What are your constraints and accountability? So lots of things. This section is probably one of them. It's going to be a very thought-provoking time for you. But we encourage you to spend the time, and it will be worth it. Anything else? Okay. So let's start with a group question. Why talk about marriage in a personal finance class? Till death do us part, until debt do us part.
Debt.
Debt. And that truly does have an impact. So highly related to healthy marital relationships. 90% of couples who divorce reported having financial difficulties.
Disagreements over money are a major source of conflict in marriage. Different financial values, savers versus spenders, different levels of tolerance and stress related to debt. Finances greatly affect feelings and relationships.
Yeah, it's a big impact. And if it's that big of an impact, we really should be concerned about it. So just some 3 points. Money exchanged for things you value really does bring you joy. When you spend money on things, I know when my family goes on vacation, I'm looking at, oh, this is really expensive. But then I'm thinking, we're having a lot of fun. We are making memories. Mm-hmm. So money spent on things you value brings joy. Money exchanged for things you don't brings frustration. My brother was talking. He says one of the best days of his life was when he bought his yellow truck. Second best day is when he sold his yellow trucks. Sometimes when you buy it, it's not quite what you think.
Money you don't have that you go into debt for, exchange for things you really don't need, bring regret and make you feel stupid.
Yeah, and I felt stupid many times in my life. So does it matter? Yeah. It can build and strengthen marital relationships.
Matsumoto's.
Matsumoto's. We did our weekly trip to Matsumoto's on Saturday, or monthly trip.
We don't do it every week.
We don't do it every week. But you know, you need to have those relationships. If you're married, you need to spend time. And sometimes just going out for a shave ice is a good thing. Does it matter in marriage? Unwisely can be conflict. When people who take on too much debt and then they don't have the ability to pay it off. That's really a frustrating thing.
And stressful.
And stressful thing.
Ultimately destroys marriages.
It destroys marriages. Or does dating money lend to better relationships? If you spend more money on dates, does that make better marriages? It's interesting that's not the case. Luckily, my wife didn't know me in college because I was really cheap. I drove a 1973 Ford Pinto, you know, unsafe at any speed, you know, one of those things too.
The amount of money spent on a date is often unrelated to building the relationship. Simple, inexpensive dates are often the best. Don't waste too much money on expensive, grand gestures. Less stress and more fun.
Yeah. What are some of the things that we've enjoyed? Game night, La EA or PCC Falls, picnic on Temple Beach, campfires.
Flying kites. We went and flew kites the other day. That was fun.
That was fun. Many of these things are not expensive, and they build the relationship too. So when should a couple start to talk about finances?
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Before you get married.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before you get engaged. That's what we said. Before getting officially engaged, talk about family culture, gospel maturity, the willingness to follow the commandments.
That's such an important thing.
Saver versus spender.
When I met Ann, I knew she would always try to do what was right, regardless. And that made a difference.
Attitude toward debt, materialism, how important are things, net worth, find out how much debt they have, FICO scores.
Hey, should you know each other's credit scores? Should you know how much debt they have? You should.
Buy an affordable ring. Don't go into debt for a wedding ring. Not a good idea. Not a good way to start a marriage.
Yeah. So who should have priority in a marriage starting off? The saver generally, but both are responsible.
Right.
And then later on, when finances are more secure, you know, we can afford that.
The spender can say that.
So who was in charge when we were married?
I was.
I know. Now later on,
now we're
say.
both in charge, but yeah.
But it's interesting.
But both are responsible.
But both
are responsible.
Somehow I think that might be a quiz question.
Yeah,
so
it is.
You might write that down just as a thought. So.
Oh, we got another question.
So why is equal partnership important in marriage?
One of the students in our first section, she said, it's just like having a bicycle. You have to have two wheels to make the bicycle go. So if you don't have one wheel, then it doesn't go very far.
That's right.
So, but two wheels can go far. So it's better to have two.
Thought it was a good analogy.
Yeah, good analogy.
You know, different cultures have different relationships. In the culture of Christ, you have equal partners. Some cultures believe, well, there's certain Latin cultures, it's the macho culture, that the guy gets to make the decision and the spouse just do that. Other cultures, you know, it's interesting, in other cultures, the wife is almost like property. It's really sad. And the question is, you know, that may be in our culture, but we rise to the higher culture there. What do you how does it make you feel if you're not a full partner in it, in the marriage? Does that encourage love and respect for each other, or
resentment?
Yeah, it leads to resentment. And I think that's the problem too many times.
Yeah. So like for most of our marriage, I haven't had a job. Like my job was to take care of the kids.
And the finances.
And the family.
And the house.
I took care of everything. I feel like I managed a small business when I managed my family. But I didn't make any money. But I never felt like I didn't have money, because his money that he made, he was the one, the breadwinner, but it was ours. It was never his money and my money. It was
and if
always
I ever
our money.
start feeling proud, she'd just leave for 3 or 4 days, and then I'd have to take 7 kids to where they're supposed to be and still do my job and things like that. I realized how quickly I would die without her.
Yeah. So anyway.
So again, it's on trust. trust is the important thing here too. We have in our family, we have a policy when toys and autos, we keep our cars 10 years or 200,000 miles, whichever comes first. And our toys, side-by-sides and things like that, ATVs, we keep them 20 years. And we had a
Some of them are already 20 years
yeah,
old.
we had a used side
but
by
we're going
side.
to keep them anyways.
And I was just looking at it, and she kind of came to me and she says, you know what, why don't you go buy the razor that you want? She says, it'll be the last one you'll ever buy.
Yeah, because
I was 62, because she says at 82, you're not going to want to buy another
razor. So he got
so when you guys come and visit us in Provo, we'll take you out on the razor.
He got a nice one, yeah.
So,
it's really fun.
But as you work together, that's the important thing, is you work and you plan and you budget together.